We want to go fast, we want to step on the gas, but first, let's set the foundation right. Once you know your brand, everything else just becomes so much easier. As a mid to senior level professional in the job search, you might be thinking that what worked before is going to work again. But the reality is that the higher you go in your career, the more experienced you are, the roles that you are going after are not going to require the same resume nor the same job search methods that worked just a couple years ago for your prior position. In fact, if you haven't been in the job search for the last 3, 5, maybe 10 plus years, technology has changed the game so much and so quickly that what you thought was the job search back then is almost unrecognizable now. And so today, I'm going to talk to you about how to make strategic progress in your job search or your career transition, how to spend the right amount of time on the right amount of things. And we're going to talk about four specific pieces. Now, before we talk about those, it's important that we go over something that comes up almost every time when I talk to clients. Now, the first thing is how quickly can we get started and how quickly can we get hired, right? That really depends on how quickly you get into the job search. But more importantly, it depends on how solid a foundation you put together first. And there's actually two big pieces that are always either missed or severely underperformed before getting into the job search. Are number one, getting clarity on the function, the level, and the unique value you bring to a particular industry or to an organization that's at a particular stage, whether a startup, established, growth, etc. And second, the brand. So think about, number one, am I super clear on what role, right? What function, what level, what industry I'm targeting? And do I also have a very solid brand? Now, what defines a solid brand? A solid brand is a brand that you know you've taken the time to put together. It's a brand that is not going to be retargeted and retargeted to fit a job posting, but instead it captures your value. It's going to be helpful that we align it with what your future company wants. However, we want to start with your value because typically, if we start with what the other company wants and we try to structure it that way, we're going to miss out on all the wonderful combination of skills that you have and the impact you've brought and the way that you can uniquely meet their outcomes in your own way. And so instead, we're going to give them sort of a regurgitation of the job description. And that's not really what we want. And so, number one, foundation is clarity on what you're targeting. And number two in your foundation is the right branding, slowing down and taking time to truly develop the branding, not only externally in writing and on your materials, but also develop that branding internally in your mind so that every time you speak, the same message comes out so that you've gotten the words to convey your value and your impact. And part of that is done through the brand development process. If you work with, say, a resume writer and they create a beautiful resume for you, what's going to happen is that then the employers see your resume. They're like, this is great. They see your message, they understand, they grasp, they have an experience with your message, right? And then they call you in, whether for an interview or maybe a screening, or maybe you had a conversation with a colleague or a hiring leader, and the message they received verbally and non-verbally from you is very different than the message they received from the resume. And so that's why in that branding phase, we work not only in branding for your resume, but also your entire communication system. What's your unique value proposition? And let's help you to fully internalize it so you can walk in with the exact same message, no matter what question is asked of you. Okay. That is the foundation. That's what I always say. We want to go fast, we want to step on the gas, but first, let's set the foundation right. And then once this happens, you'd be surprised. Folks have been hired in as little as 30 days, which I still think is just unbelievable. But the fact of the matter is that once you know your brand, everything else just becomes so much easier. Some people take longer to get hired, some people take less, but the fact that we've had several clients already who have either been recruited from their LinkedIn or who submitted 5 applications, went on one interview, and it just so happened to be a great fit for them, the company had no choice but to say, you are clearly our ideal candidate. And that particular person happened to have doubled their income. So we know this works. Okay, so let me talk you through the four things that I tend to work with clients on in terms of making the most intentional and strategic progress. It's high impact, so you're not burning out. Okay, number one, spend time on the 20% action that's going to lead to your 80% progress. What does that mean? That means being really intentional and looking at all the tasks that you have on your job search checklist and deciding which ones are the highest impact. Now, if you don't yet know which ones are the highest impact, which is possible if you're doing this on your own, you're probably like, okay, how do I measure that? Right? I'll give you a couple of examples. If you're using outdated methods, meaning if you are on the job boards for most of your job search time and you're trying to figure out what jobs are open, okay, let me redo my resume, let me apply to this open job, and let me go back to the job boards, you're probably spending too much time there. It's especially true if you're aiming for senior level roles because the higher the role, the more risk there is involved, and therefore the more trust you need to build. And so, employers typically want to hire people they know or people that their employees know. So now there's less risk involved because there's more trust because of that personal connection. Now, the other reason why you don't want to be spending time on job boards, especially for senior roles, is because when you submit a job application for a job board, it is almost instantly positioning you as a small person looking for a job. Please get me hired, right? And this huge company that's thinking, okay, well, I'm going to, look at these 100 applications and choose who the top candidate is, right? And it's not that way, but it feels that way, right? A company genuinely wants to hire the best person for the job. And this just happens to be the mechanism. But the way that it kind of does this one to many feel, and the way that, when you get a rejection email or when you get a ghosting email, the way that feels, it feels like you're positioned incorrectly from the get go. And so, if you spend time on the 20% of action that gets you to 80% of progress, that means, hey, let's not spend quite as much time on the job boards and let's instead change our perspective, change our strategy to a networking foundation, a relationship building foundation, one in which you build trust first. And, if you're interested in this, I actually help folks to create the flow of conversation that feels really natural but also that starts with building trust and then moves on to garnering information and then moves on to sharing your value and then very subtly providing an opportunity for you to stay in touch for future possibilities. Now, the point here is that this conversation helps you to position yourself from the very beginning, not as a resume in a pile of 100, but as someone who is strategic, someone who is proactive, who gets their message together, knows exactly what they offer, knows how to solve a problem, and then starts conversations with folks from that position of excellence, from that position of power. That is number one. Number two is keeping an eye on over optimization. If you feel like you are tweaking your resume to death, then this one is for you. In order to stop and avoid over optimization, you need that solid brand we talked about earlier. Because when you have a solid brand, you're confident in it. That means that you move forward without any fear that you have missed something along the way. It means that you're going to spend minimal time retargeting because here's what happens. If you don't have a solid brand, what it does is it places a little bit of doubt in your mind from the get go. And then you're going to go and look at a job description and you're going to want to have your resume reflect the outcomes that they need. However, because that little bit of doubt is in your mind, you're going to be eternally retargeting that resume to try and figure out why is it that I don't feel that my resume conveys the value I can bring to this organization? Oh, I'm missing some keywords. Let's throw those in there. Why is it that I still feel that way? Okay, let me throw some more keywords. Let me. And over time, you basically turn your resume into the job description. So, if you have a solid brand that you're confident in, one that reflects you and your impact and your unique value combination of skills, right? And then also one that's been systematically developed, meaning because you know your target role, right? Your function, you know your industry, You know the level at which you're applying. You now have a resume that's been systematically developed to incorporate both you and your value and your next role. And we find the intersection of both in the best possible way. And so as you move forward, there's no fear that you've missed something and you've got minimal retargeting because there isn't any doubt in your mind. Okay. Number 3. I always encourage folks to stay high level. And this is part of why a coach is so helpful. Because when we do things on our own, have you ever had that when you're kind of in the middle, let's just say the job search, why not, right? This is the example we're talking about right now. So, if you stay on your own and it's just you. You are the person who is applying for jobs. You're the person who's hearing back. You're the person who's deciding what to put on your resume. You're the person who's trying to craft your interview stories, right? And no matter what, you'll be doing these things. But if you're on your own, if there's nobody there to reflect back to you, when you're in the weeds, when you're making decisions and spending time on things that are going to split hairs instead of stepping back and saying, hold on, is this a job even one that I really want? Is this particular company one that I am invested in? And here's the thing, if you are truly invested in that company, then life will come from that. There's that genuine connection, that genuine desire to move forward that mission, and it will come across in materials and you won't feel like you're splitting hairs. If it's not, it's just going to feel like work. And so, not staying high level, not making every single move intentionally is going to mean that you'll eventually be reduced down to really small, low impact, task oriented busyness. Now, even the most accomplished professionals can get stuck in the details. And then months later, hopefully not, but sometimes when you're in your next role, that's when you realize, "Ah, I somehow molded myself into the posting that they wanted, but this is not actually who I am or what I want out of my career. I've molded myself to them instead of bringing my own unique brand and trusting the high potential of the value that I bring." And this is so important because here's the reality, employers don't always know exactly what they want. They know the parameters, but they also are going to interview folks. They're going to go through the process and they're going to know it when they see it. They're going to know, oh my goodness, this person is going to make happen what we've been trying to make happen for months. This person is going to solve our challenge, solve our problem. And the goal is that we help them to see you in that light. And that happens by you internalizing this compelling message, by having a unique, one of a kind brand, a combination of skills that is not available, most likely, in the other candidates. And we find that brand by doing your deep dive. And of course, you'll then back it up with evidence based communications. And so, what is evidence based communications? This basically means that you'll have some stories ready to go and a structure that you can use over and over for new stories with the goal of sharing not only the facts and the logic, but also the persuasiveness, the emotional connection, right? So you have the communications piece that's garnering their investment, but you also have the logic that's going to back up and justify their reason for moving you forward. And that is exactly what we do at the Uncommon Career. And so let's stop right here and take a quick moment because if this is you, if you're done waiting and if you know it's time, then come work with me because I offer a strategic career coaching experience where you're going to get clear on a career direction, strategize a compelling brand, design a custom job search approach that fits your goals and your style. And you'll also learn how to communicate like a sought after professional. This is where that evidence based communication comes in. The point is that this is a full circle coaching experience to help you move not just into a new role, but into a whole new season with coaching through your first 90 days strategy so that you can firmly establish your career and your life transition. Listen, if you're looking for evidence based coaching, for personalized one on one support, and for a system that's gotten professional women hired with a shorter search and a better offer, Then apply now at the link below. Go ahead and schedule the conversation, and then we can see if you're eligible for the program, if it's a good fit for you, and if we want to work together. Okay, so at this point, I've already talked about three of the main ways that I help you make strategic progress in the job search and transition. So let's get into the fourth. The fourth surefire way to keep yourself making progress at every step of the way and actually enjoy your job search is to notice when perfectionism starts to creep in, because perfectionism is not your friend. Perfectionism is procrastination with just a cuter outfit. Procrastination is what stops your momentum, and perfectionism is exactly that. It stops your momentum and it's going to feel like action. So you may not even notice that it has stopped your momentum until it's too late. And it feels like action because it is action. It's just action in the wrong direction. And in fact, perfectionism and procrastination is action in a cycle. And typically that cycles downward. And that's because that cycle has one thought: is this good enough? Is this good enough? But what happens when you do this in isolation is you keep asking yourself, is this good enough? But you don't have feedback to tell you the answer. So if you don't take action, then you just keep asking the question without an answer, and that turns into doubt. So, what started as a question turns into a statement. This is not good enough. Even though we may not say it out loud, it'll get in the way of your progress. And so, this is where I can help you take action, notice feedback, and then use that feedback to improve your job search communication. So, what does that look like? This looks like you have to take the action to move from internal, meaning tweaking my resume here by myself at my office, right? Moving that externally into taking action, putting it out there, seeing what the response is. Then from there, you notice the feedback. And keep in mind that feedback can be both positive or negative. If you get a rejection, if you get ghosted, if you get an interview, all of those are types of feedback. Something they say, a question you're asked during a screening, a question you're asked during an interview, something a colleague says as they're reviewing your resume. All of those are pieces of feedback. And you can use that to improve your job search communications by pausing and asking yourself, how can I change the way people experience my brand? I'll leave you with this: done is so much better than perfect, but eternally in progress. And so think about starting slow by making sure you have the right foundation, the right target in mind, and the right brand. And those two make up your foundation. So start slow there, and then you can hit the gas and go after it with those 4 steps to help you make strategic progress in your transition. Stick with me. I partner with clients every day who, just like you, are high achievers looking to build a positive and high energy momentum in their search so they can land their roles faster. And if you enjoyed this episode, come back next week because Brittany Granick and I are going to be talking about how to maximize your career success in HR or anywhere else with the 4 E's using a flywheel. Listen, I'm Patricia Ortega, your career and transformational coach, here to help you build the clarity, the brand, and the communication you need to stay grounded, focused, and empowered for your search. Get in the game, stay in the game, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey, thanks for listening. I really appreciate you spending time with me today. If you found this episode helpful, please tap the 5-star review on the show's homepage in your podcast app. It would absolutely make my day, and it helps others discover the Uncommon Career Podcast. Now, to download your free career resources and learn how I help seasoned professionals land amazing offers in as little as 90 days, click on the link in the description or go to theuncommoncareer.com. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.